Chapter 12, Organizing and Finding Support for Your Speech. Coming up, state your purpose and thesis, organize your speech, create an effective outline, find support for your speech. State your purpose and thesis. One of the main steps of planning a speech is to choose the message of your speech. So you're going to have to decide if your speech is going to be something that's for general purposes. Do you want to inform people of something? Do you want to persuade them to view things the way you may view them? Or do you want to entertain them? After that, you're going to narrow the scope of your speech. So you're basically going to choose a topic and a purpose. So the thesis is the main message of your speech. So what are you trying to get across? Do you want to inform people of a certain illness? Do you want to inform people of a certain atrocity a group of people are facing? Do you want to convince people to believe in climate change? So you have to think about those things that are near and dear to you. State your purpose and thesis. So craft a statement for your specific purpose, and a purpose statement is a declaration of your specific goal for your speech. So you could say that I want to identify how many people have pancreatitis in the U.S. Or maybe you want to identify the issues that patients with pancreatitis face since they have chronic pain. Some doctors might label them as drug seekers. Some family members might not understand. So basically you want to teach people that have pancreatitis actually do have pain comparable to cancer pain. So you will identify your general goal for your speech and identify your topic. So if I wanted to do one on pancreatitis, it would be, as far as the goal goes, it would be to inform people about the pain issues that are real that people with pancreatitis face. So you're going to craft a thesis statement, and a thesis statement is a one-sentence version of messages in your speech. So it's basically like that first sentence in a paragraph, which the first sentence usually tells you what is going to be within that entire paragraph. So I could say, patients with chronic pancreatitis face chronic pain issues and health disparities in the U.S. And disparities just means that they have unequal treatment or unequal health outcomes. In order to develop a strong thesis statement, you could follow these guidelines. So be concrete. So basically have something solid that you're going to talk about. Make a statement and try to keep it to one sentence if you can, and treat your thesis statement as a work in progress. So it might be something that you edit after you're continuing on with your speech, because you might realize that you have a different message you want to get across, or you want to include something else in your message. So it's okay for your thesis to change. Organize your speech. So on page 321 in your book, there is figure 1, and that is actually what your final, or part of your final, is going to be. That's how it's going to be broken up as far as your speech goes. So you're going to have an introduction, and that's going to give you a preview of the information to be presented, just like you would if you were writing an essay. Then you have a body, and it's composed of specific main points. So those main points might be certain issues related to your main issue that you want people to realize. So if I'm saying that pancreatitis patients deal with chronic pain and health disparities, I could have an example of a story of a chronic pain patient, maybe having to go to the hospital quite a few times because of their health issues. I can have a story about how difficult it is to pay for the medication because it's so expensive, and that would be, an example of a health disparity. And then if I wanted to convince people to learn about it or to care, I can tell another story, which could be like an anecdote. I could talk about how many of them are passing away. I can talk about how a lot of medical professionals believe it is due to alcoholism. However, it's really, I can have facts in there supporting that it's really due to genetic issues or a malfunction or a defect before the patient is born. It could be from gallstones, it could be from the gallbladder not working correctly, liver issues, it could be from a surgery, car crash, or like any other trauma to the abdomen. So I could have all of those main points, which I listed quite a few, and then give supporting evidence for those. Transitions are basically what connects one point to the next. So it's basically your sentence that connects one paragraph to the next paragraph. And then you have the conclusion, which is going to summarize your message. And like I said before, this is located on 321 of how I want your speech to be organized when you have it typed out for me to read. So for organizing your speech, the introduction tells the story of your speech. So you want to generate interest in the topic. If you are a funny person, you can tell a joke, you can ask a question, you can cite an opinion, you could startle your listeners. I'm more on the dramatic side, so I would give probably a statistic of how many people are affected with pancreatitis, or maybe how many people die per year in the US with pancreatitis. Or you can note the occasion. Maybe it's actually a happy speech for a wedding, or like at the beginning of the chapter, it has the former president writing a speech or practicing a speech that he wrote with his speechwriter. So you can note the occasion as far as inauguration, or you can identify something familiar. But your first introduction, you want people to be interested in whatever you're going to talk about. So the introduction tells the story of your speech. So it gives your main points of what you're going to talk about. It can talk about the major ideas you plan to address, and you can place your preview at the end of your introduction. So you can have your introduction and you could say, well, pancreatitis is a huge issue that affects, a certain number of Americans. I could talk about how it's a burden on the healthcare system and how there's many health disparities, and without going into too much detail. So that way, when I have the subsequent paragraphs that follow the introduction, so you have the introduction and then a body paragraph, body paragraph, body paragraph, at least 3 of them, they're basically going to support what was in the introduction. It's going to be a preview for the introduction, and then the body paragraphs have the main points spelled out. So the body is going to express your main points. So whatever it is that you're trying to get across, and they're going to be related to the whole point of the speech. They should be distinct. So basically they should stand out by themselves. But they should also be equally important to whatever your topic is. So the body expresses your main points, and there are some examples on 323 to 324. But this slide talks about how the main points can be organized. So you can have various patterns, and this is going to help you with your speech. So, like I said, it's page 325. So you can organize the main points by topic. You might have a pattern of topics you want to talk about that relate to the main point. So on 325, their examples talking about different types of aquatic life. And so they have fish, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. So all of those relate to aquatic life. And then they have a time pattern, which is the next one, and it's arranged by different points of time. That's one that I like to do. Also the topic, but I really do like the time. So if you're telling a personal story about maybe something you learned out of life, you could have an example of when you were younger, maybe when you were a teenager, and then maybe another example in your life as an adult that relates to whatever the main topic is. And then we have the space pattern, and that organizes your points according to areas. So they used atmospheric layers as part of their example. So those are different types that you could do. Then there is the cause and effect. So basically you want to talk about a cause of something and the effect that it had on people. So maybe the cause of the opioid epidemic and the effects that it has on family members. And then there's problem and solution type pattern. You could be presenting a problem and then have a solution. So those are some different types of ways to express your speech. Transitions. So it helps you connect one part of your speech to the next. And on page 326 of your textbook, they use phrases like, next I'd like to discuss, or let's now turn to ... So those are some ways of transitioning. So we have a preview transition, and that alerts listeners to the change in topic. And then we have summaries, which briefly reminds listeners of the main points that was already made by the speaker. And then we have signposts, and those are little single words or phrases that distinguish one point of a presentation from another. So there are some examples, like I said, on page 326 and 327. So the conclusion reinforces your central message. So you're basically like summarizing it toward the end. You're going to reiterate what your thesis statement was and then create a memorable moment. So you might have a quote from yourself or maybe someone that you respect. Oh, and then there's also nonverbal transitions. So those could be how you maybe change your voice. When I'm typically talking, sometimes when I'm going on to a new topic, I say so, which I've been told by people that know me. So that would be a nonverbal transition in the fact that I sort of elongate my so. I don't just say so, I say so. Or it could be like how loud you speak, how low you are, if you pause, if you use gestures. So all of those are nonverbal transitions. Creating an effective outline for your speech. So there are 3 rules for creating an effective outline. So first we're going to start with the rule of subordination, and it basically talks about that some concepts or points that you want to talk about are more important than other points. Then we have the rule of division, and you want each paragraph or each main topic in your body to have the same amount of points in them. And then the rule of parallel structure is having your paragraph sort of begin the same way. So when it comes to these 3, for this slide, I am not going to grade against this if you don't get this down completely. If we were actually in person, I would have a chance to actually read your speeches beforehand. So I am not going to focus too much on grading off for this slide. So don't panic if that portion is confusing. So here's an outline for speeches that could help. You have the title, the purpose statement, the thesis statement, the introduction, the main points and subpoints, the conclusion, and your resources. So if you needed to convert your outline, your written outline, into speaking notes or a speaking outline, as if you were going to present it to a group of people, you would just delete the title, purpose statement, and thesis statement. You're going to add a brief reminder about your introduction, abbreviate your main points and subpoints, and then add a brief reminder about your conclusion. And so that way, while you're giving the speech in person to other people, you won't forget what you were supposed to talk about. Also on page 334, it has an example of some speaking notes. Okay, so find support for your speech. So identify places in your speech where you need support. And support would be facts, it could be statistics, but basically you need evidence of the accuracy of whatever your statement is. So opinion statements can be supported by experts who share those opinions. There are different ways to support your speech. So you can have definitions, examples, statistics, quotations, and narratives, and those are stories or like examples, maybe personal examples or someone you know or something that you read about, where they're telling a story to support your main. So know how to evaluate the supporting material when you're looking for it. So make sure it's credible. Make sure it's a website that's reputable or one that you trust. Make sure if it's a person, make sure that they actually have experience in whatever the topic is. be objective, so just bring facts also, and make sure it's pretty current. Now, when it comes to stats, sometimes they're 4 years old or maybe up to 5 years old, but don't talk about something that was 20 years ago as far as making something credible, unless it's, you know, like a personal story or you telling something about back in the day of how things used to be, but you can still find facts that were current for that time. So avoid committing plagiarism. So you don't want to copy and paste completely from a website. You can rephrase what someone said, or you can put direct quotations if you're taking someone else's statements. So don't commit theft. Don't put different information from various websites into the same area, which would be like patchwork. And like, don't have incremental theft where you just do it every so often. Basically, you just don't want to copy anyone else's speech completely, or their ideas or their information, without quoting them and giving respect and citing your sources. So theft is not okay. Plagiarism is not okay. You can use verbal footnotes, and for example, you can say, according to the American Psychiatric Association, this many people have borderline disorder. And you could visit plagiarism.org if you want to make sure you're citing things correctly. You can also reach out to me if you're nervous about maybe plagiarizing or citing. But I want you guys to really think about what you want to talk about for your final speech. That is due week 10, but it's good to at least get some ideas going. So find things that you're passionate about, things that you care about, things that matter to you. Maybe come up with a short list that you can take some notes on to see if you can find information to support it.